This video is way too long for one of these.
Imaginary mirror, showing me things I've never seen, taking me places I've never been, walking around in a living dream. Fantastic colors of red and green, a portal to a new reality, a comprehension of a different dimension. My mind is alive.
Hey, welcome back to Ground Zero Salem with your host Pat. One of the last videos from Ground Zero Salem proper. Might keep the channel name, might not, don't know. We are leaving the Witch City in less than a month. As I mentioned my last update, these boxes are behind me because we're moving. I think October 7th is the moving date. My wife got a new job in the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area of North Carolina. So we're moving down there. Was a job she couldn't pass up. Houses are bigger and cheaper. Cost of living's better. Just seemed like a better move. I can work anywhere because I work in healthcare, so that shouldn't be an issue. So up until then, you may get a lot of videos from me. My kid is now in kindergarten. I have mornings free to just do whatever. So why not make a bunch of content? As I said last video, thanks for everybody for being patient. You know, life happens. I don't do this professionally, obviously, with this whopping 2,000 subs. So, you know, people's support is always appreciated. So, to show my appreciation, I have a big old box of CDs. I'm starting to pack everything up. Once I'm done with these, I'll probably seal up the box. I've got them all ripped to my Dropbox. I can listen to them whenever. Of stuff that I've listened to over the summer. This is commuter music to go to my new, now old job that I've left. A lot of metal. Mostly metal. There's a little bit of hardcore in there. Kind of gotten back into death metal lately. I had a big couple of months there in the fall where I was listening to tons of death rock and punk and noisy D-beatish kind of hardcore stuff, and I wasn't really feeling it so much. But you know how being a music nut goes. Everything ebbs and flows, and just when I think I'm out, they keep pulling me back into the brutality and the gutturalness. Speaking of which, this is what we're listening to. Sadiatic Rot, Morbid Nightmare. Came out last year on a label from Maine called War March. Bands from Colombia. Elements of this, certain moments bring to mind like Chris Barnes era Cannibal Corpse, Buffalo death metal, maybe Baphomet a little bit. But it's got like a lot more kind of thrashy riffs going on, so it's got like an Eaten Back to Life sort of thing to it. You can probably hear that. But there's a big like kind of gloomy, you know, slasher wandering through the graveyard kind of horror movie vibe. Not all too dissimilar from like what Scorched is doing. I think I like these guys a little bit better, Sadiatic Rot. Nothing against Scorched, they're a good band as well. But yeah, solid death metal record. I can't even remember where I heard about it. I just picked it up on a whim. Then we've got Ritual Sacrifice. So this is a, until now, shelved and unreleased record. They were a band that did mostly demos in the 90s. They were from Providence, Rhode Island. I actually ordered one of their demos from Metal Maniacs way back when, from like a demo review. I can't remember what that column was called, but that one. And they're great. They're very, very Slayer influenced, leaning maybe a little bit more towards something a little bit more extreme, like Infernal Majesty. Almost stepping into that brutal death metal, death thrash kind of territory, but not quite. A lot of like kind of political lyrics, which I appreciate. Left-leaning, of course. Just a really good, solid, like fairly technical thrash record from the mid-90s that just never saw the light of day. I mean, death metal was the thing going on at the time, so a lot of thrash fell by the wayside. One of these guys from this band's brother is the vocalist for Drop Dead, by the way. As I noticed in the original demo ad in Metal Maniacs, the guy was wearing a Drop Dead shirt, and I was like, holy shit, that's wild. Then, a band that I've been really, really into lately, kind of deep diving on, thanks to the Heavy Hole podcast mentioning this stuff. I did have a CD of theirs that was recent, sent to me from Mike Woodford, by the way. Speaking of Mike Woodford, sub the dude. He sent me a Blood of Christ CD. This is a Toronto band that was around in the 90s and 2000s. Like a reunion era one. It was like very competent but super sterile production, really clicky drums. It's just not really my thing. But I decided to delve into their back catalog, and I got this A Dream to Remember. This is their full length, their first full length. And then Chapter 3, The Lonely Flowers of Autumn, which is a compilation of demo stuff. And it's a really weird marriage of styles that maybe to some people's ears wouldn't work very well. For me, it's awesome. It's a mix of like a very early example of brutal death metal. I'm talking about the Long Island stuff, maybe some of the Buffalo area stuff, just like those kind of Liege of Inveracity type breakdowns, mixed with a little bit of like shrieky black metalness, and a lot of like kind of peaceful, gothy, Paradise Lost, My Dying Bride kind of touches with the keyboards and stuff like that. Not as heavy as those bands did it, but it's in there for atmosphere, and it's great. It's so cool. The later record that I had really wasn't like that at all. It was fine, modern death metal stuff, but yeah, this is sick. I've got another compilation of demos and other assorted material. I think it's the Lonely Flowers of Autumn 2 that's in the mail right now. I can't wait to get my paws on it. Alright, then we've got, dip into hardcore here for a minute, Depression from Australia. I don't know if I should, got a hole in his head. Yeah, real brutal cover. See that, you might think gore grind or something like that. It's actually straight up hardcore, early 80s proper hardcore. Drawing influences. I mean, Australia was, I think in a bit of a vacuum, being where they were located geographically. The influences, you can hear like some Brit, like almost anarcho-punk influences, I feel like, but also like kind of blistering American hardcore as well. Real piss stuff. I first heard them on a Death Records compilation, a song called Endless Armies. That song sounded a little bit more like crossover leaning. This gets there a little bit, but I think they have records after this that get a little bit more metallic. But this is straight up ripping 80s hardcore from Australia. Reactor Records. Yeah, it's just called Depression. It's a compilation. It might be, there's another one called The Radiation Years. I don't know if this is the same one or not. Then I have the, I think, fourth Unleashed record, Victory. Yeah, it has its moments, but definitely doesn't hold a candle to the first two or three. A lot of like chunky, like jump the fuck up, kind of like E chord, open E, like kind of moshy parts on it, which, I mean, that's in my bloodstream. I'm from Syracuse, New York, but still, it didn't. I mean, I can't really vouch for this one other than a couple of tracks. I picked this up. I have these on vinyl. I just, I'm a semi-completist, a lazy completist. When I really, really like a band, I like to rationalize to myself, for convenience, and this will stick around longer. Records might warp or deteriorate. You'll have a CD. You can burn it. It's all excuses. This is the first two Hirax records on one CD. Not Dead Yet +1. It's Raging Violence and Hate, Fear, and Power plus a live video. Ooh, CD-ROM. Fucking tight. You should know Hirax if you're watching this channel. If you don't, we talked about them extensively in that whole speed metal thing that Marty and Alan and I did, but classic LA thrash, speed, almost crossover stuff, really wailing vocals, great fucking piercing metal vocals from Caton, just super energetic metal with like lots of great change-ups. It's got the immediacy of a lot of hardcore, like all the songs, not all the songs, but the vast majority of them are under 3 minutes. It's just a quick, kick to the nards. God, love Hirax, Plus head cover there. Mad Mark Rude cover there. I mean, what else am I gonna say, Then we'll go to a new release, 2021, just came out in July. Severed Boy. So I listened to this today. I've listened to it a bunch of times. Just wanted to refresh myself. hard to pin down, which is a good thing. I guess it's a side project of a band called Lunglust that I'd never heard of or heard. I looked them up. They're from here. They're from Boston. Just goes to show how out of touch I am with anything going on near me geographically. This is like a COVID project, and you know, an isolation kind of deal. Can't go anywhere. Can't do anything. Let's record some songs, and it's great. I mean, I hear people I've heard and read people kind of tag it doom death. Those elements are there. There's a lot of like gloomy, melancholic melodies. It has the occasional fast part. It has a certain catchiness to it that it's like, I think these guys are involved in, I don't know what Lunglust sounds like. I'm definitely going to investigate them now because I really like this. But you can tell these guys might have more of a background in like crust or hardcore or something like that. I just get that from this. To a lot of like dyed-in-the-wool neckbeard metalheads, that might be a detractor. It's not for me. There's memorability to this. There's almost some repetitive, I don't know if I could call them choruses, but some lyrics you can pick out and repeat. You know, it's got a certain fist pumping quality to it, but also super murky. There's an interlude in the middle, Agony and Despair, that's really cool, almost kind of noise track, like atmospheric, industrial kind of thing. That's really rad. Tragic Encounters. You know, almost 4 or 5 years of doing this, and like half the album titles I forget to mention. It's ridiculous. Cadaveric Incubator, Nightmare Necropolis, brand new on HHR. This is great. I mean, it's not really any different from the last one. Maybe a little bit stronger in the songwriting department, memorability, but it's just killer Finnish death grind stuff. You know, strong Carcass influence, strong Finnish TM in general kind of influence. Really, really good. Definitely a fun listen. And then along those lines, I have something very similar influence-wise. I might as well pair these. Vacant Coffin's Sewer Sculpture. Heard about this one on the Heavy Hole as well. Will mentioned that it sounded like kind of like a lot of like early Carcass gore grind kind of stuff with some Finnish, traditional Finnish death metal, as well as maybe a little bit of Autopsy. Real filthy, grindy stuff. This is Lasse Pico of Hooded Menace, Claws, Acid Witch, all those bands. Doing, you know, his little ode to like kind of more death grindy kind of stuff, and it's good. It's gloomy, but it's also like kind of gurgly and gross. And I am just segueing like an MF right now. Since I mentioned Hooded Menace, I picked up the new one. Another 2021 release. Look at me talking about stuff that came out this year. Good job. I might even do a 2021 video. You never know. Hooded Menace, the Tritonus Bell. So I haven't checked in with Hooded Menace in ages. I was completely in love with the first two albums, and then for whatever reason, I can't remember which one I heard. The one after Never Cross the Dead, and I was just kind of like, it seems like they're spinning their wheels, and I never looked back into it. And I'd seen a bunch of people talking about this, social media, you know, it was popping up, and I figured, what the hell, had some Amazon points, and snagged it, and man, is it great. They're kind of incorporating a lot more faster tempos, not overdoing it, doing really beautiful, like, regal, gloomy melodies that seem somewhere in between Finnish death metal when it gets, like, melancholic and sort of melodic and almost like Melodeath, and I'm not mad at that at all. It's memorable, it's something different. This is great. There's a little bit more like avant-garde, like Celtic Frost weirdness in there as well that I always appreciate. I listened to Into the Pandemonium yesterday when making dinner. I don't know why people don't like that record. You're a bunch of Philistines. That record's great, and I almost kind of want to go, well, what was going on with the last couple of Hooded Menace records, you know? Alright, grab another one here. Astaroth. I did go on a big Vic Records deep dive recently. Picked up a bunch of stuff. Them and The Crypt are those two reissue labels where I almost can't go wrong. It takes maybe 5 seconds of research to be like, okay, that's a type of genre I like, so I'm going to buy it. This is a Florida band that I never heard of, that was around in the early 90s. Had a member or two from Acheron that went on to do this. 93, 95, and 98 demos. And it's long. There's 20 songs on this. All of these demos, recording-wise, are pretty much like album quality as far as how good they sound. And it's great hearing a Florida band that isn't trying to sound like a typical Florida band from the era. It's definitely got a more simplistic, grimy approach to death metal that seems really influenced by like Grave and Entombed, but involving other stuff as well. As far as like other regional bands, they might sound like a little bit. I'd say Obituary, but that's kind of a far-off cousin sound-wise. Really, really good stuff. I've been spinning this a ton. I'm gonna take a sip of water here. I get more tongue-tied when my tongue is sticking to the roof of my mouth. I'm on a new diet too. It like has you drinking water constantly, and like that's great. I feel better than I have in years, being fully hydrated. But man, I'm 43. I'm always running to take a piss. It's the thing they never tell you. All the time spent peeing. All right. Here's one. Sulaco. This is a Rochester band. Tear Through the Roots. Picked this up very recently. Only spun it once. It's really good. It's a lot to take in. It's got, I think his name is Eric, the guitarist that's been kind of a journeyman touring with like Napalm Death and Brutal Truth. He, and maybe one other member of this band were in Lethargy before this. And Lethargy was like a really important band in Rochester around the time that I lived there. If you don't know, half of them went on to form Mastodon after being in Today Is the Day, being the backing guys for Today Is the Day. And this is kind of continuing what Lethargy was doing. I always thought that it was a supreme injustice that Lethargy never got a lot of the credit that they deserved, that I feel like Dillinger Escape Plan and Converge and some bands like that got. I mean, you can't really say, oh, well, they did it first and nobody heard it, because there's a bunch of overlapping stuff of shit going on, especially in New Jersey with Dillinger. There was Human Remains and all that kind of stuff, so it all kind of blends together. It just so happens that Lethargy, when they were around in Rochester, were doing this insanely technical, weird version of what started as like technical death metal and then kind of branched into just like its own thing, kind of in sort of sounding like a weird kind of hardcore band, but not. They were definitely more on the metal side than I would say like Dillinger, but you know, it's only a slight degree of separation there. Sulaco kind of continued that tradition of just this really raging, mathy, blasty, occasionally skronky, weird, off-tempo, off-kilter metal stuff. It's really dizzying, so it's on Willowtip, so there you go. That's 2000s on Willowtip in a nutshell there. But it's rad. It's super good. And it's one of those things where, like, I don't know where I've been. I've known about Lethargy for ages. I think I've heard Sulaco in passing, heard of them in passing, but never knew that, like, there was a continuation of Lethargy at all, so shame on me. Alright. Let's talk about this again. Scanner Hypertrace. I've been listening to this constantly. I got the tape not that long ago. Loved it. And this popped up on the Metal CD Collectors Facebook group that I'm in. And actually it was the Guttural Monk that mentioned this. Thank you, sir. And I was like, oh man, I'm going to get it on CD too. This is great. You know, I don't listen to a ton of melodic, traditional metal, power metal kind of stuff. Pretty selective about it. I like a fair amount, but you know, it really has to catch my ear. And I just sing these songs in my head all the time. A place that we call Terrion. Like that one in particular. What sucks about that song though, Terrion, track 2, on this, this is, as far as I know, an 80s pressing. Nope, sorry, 1998. So even less of an excuse, but a 98 pressing of this Scanner record, Hypertrace. I don't know if it's direct to CD from like the master reel tapes or something, but there's definitely wow and flutter, and it sounds like it's underwater on a couple of repetitions of that chorus, and it's a really good chorus. It's such a kind of a bummer, but I have the cassette too, so I haven't listened to them side to side to compare. I don't know. That's kind of a bummer, but whatever. What can I do for variety? Okay, we'll go from Scanner to Cold as Life. Born to Land Hard. The debut LP, Detroit band. Pretty scary dudes. Part of that whole kind of scene of like Marauder and Madball and all that kind of metallic hardcore stuff from the early to mid 90s, the real menacing shit, street level stuff. Very excited this finally got reissued. It's been out of print for quite a while. A389 came back, awesome label from the Baltimore area. Dom runs it. He's released so much good stuff on there. All kinds of stuff. Spitting Teeth, Ringworm reissues, Chokehold reissues. Just a great hardcore label that kind of leans more to the metal tinged side of things. And so he's, back with a bang on this one. It's awesome. At the time, there wasn't a lot of hardcore that was this metallic, that was straightforward hardcore. And I think that the kind of scene revolving around the East Coast Assault comps and all that stuff kind of roped in like one or two dudes that were really into metal previously and kind of contributed that riff-wise to the sound, and that's what this is. It's super bludgeoning, really sandpapery, almost kind of guttural vocals, really, really heavy hardcore stuff. Their demos previously with their old singer leaned more in sort of a punk oi direction, but also had like a certain shreddiness to them, and that's almost completely stripped away in this. It does have an anthemic quality, but it's real stompy and real mean. Great band if you haven't heard it. Just super crucial, important band if you like that kind of hardcore. Then let's talk about a completely different kind of hardcore. Framtid from Japan. This is all the demos. Consuming Shit and Mind Pollution. Early demos 1997 to 2001. Noisy ass D-beat from Japan. And there's not too much more to add than that, other than I saw them live twice and almost got my head ripped off. Just incredibly heavy for D-beat that isn't at all metallic. We're not talking like later Dysphere or Martyrdom or anything like that. Like straightforward, basic 3-chord kind of D-beat. It's just sonically overwhelming, crushing, feedback laden, but not so much that it's all bordering into noise territory. Really important band, great band. And I finally picked up a Grav CD after hearing about them. I think the first time I heard about them, Mike was talking about them. I've heard about Grav for years. Black metal's another one where I'm like pick and choose. I like a lot of it overall, but I kept hearing about how like these guys had like, whether it's unintentional or not, like a weird surfy kind of thin wiry guitar sound. They're like, yeah, it's surfy kind of black metal, and that's accurate. Obviously they're not going for like a Man or Astro Man, but black metal kind of thing. But the way that the watery sounding guitars carry across kind of makes it that way, and it's cool. It's a really good release. This is up there for one of my favorite death metal records of the year. Dungeon Serpent, World of Sorrows. Came out a couple of months ago on Nameless Grave Records. Great label, by the way. Scope them out. I'll put the Bandcamp for this. So this is melodic death metal, but it's not your dad's melodic death metal, or maybe it is your dad's melodic death metal, and you're the kid that doesn't know any better. I don't know where I'm going with this analogy. It takes a lot from like very early Edge of Sanity and like even some like Greek black metal bands, Rotting Christ and stuff like that. Really, really dirty, ugly guitar tone, but all these like pretty catchy like gallops and like tasty melodic parts, but deeper, rougher, growly vocals. It's pretty epic. It's 6 songs, and like almost a full album length. There's a pretty long like instrumental at the end of it. It's rad. Very, very good. Speaking of Edge of Sanity, I've known this for years. I've back to front, but I've never owned it. Unorthodox, which is the second one. Yes. Yeah, love it. I mean, the clean vocal part that comes in right away early on there just kills me every time. I think the Spectral Sorrows is probably my favorite, but just because it has a little bit more variation. But you can't go wrong with this early stuff. It's awesome. I actually haven't explored Edge of Sanity past Spectral Sorrows, so I should probably get on that and check out Crimson and all that stuff. But if you don't know, early Swedish death metal, very melodic, but not quite as melodic as the Gothenburg At the Gates stuff that came later. Almost like Entombed with a little bit more like tunefulness to them for the uninitiated. Great shit. Then we got Ironside. So this is a early metallic hardcore band from England, like early 90s to mid 90s, and even before all the Belgian bands and the German bands started doing this hybrid of like modern hardcore at the time and like thrash and death metal, these guys were like doing it super early, probably taking cues from Integrity and Slayer and stuff like that. Members went on to be in Iron Monkey and Hard to Swallow. It sounds like a heavier Integrity. It's pretty thrashy, almost death metal influenced. Really good stuff. Just a handful of, like a couple of 7 inches and a demo, I think, is all that was on this. And then they broke edge and started Iron Monkey. Got the new Undergang. Aldrig I Leave It. Undergang. I check in with these guys every couple of albums. I'm usually not disappointed. I don't know what that is on the disc. That's gross. Ew. Dansk metal. This one is pretty catchy for as, sewer level guttural as the vocalist is. It's really enjoyable. Don't really have too much else to say than that, but it's a fun listen. This will be a fun one to pronounce. This is a Finnish band. I'm going to go with Rytmihairo, and this is called Sermon Vuodet, the Homicide Ears. I had a 12-inch by these guys, an LP, not that long ago, and then I think I was just purging stuff before I moved here, and I was like, I can't get into this, and sold it. Kind of regretted it ever since, and I bought this on the cheap. I think it was like a deep discount CD or one of those websites, and I feel foolish. I'd like to still have that vinyl. Very early Spine Farm release. This is great. It's crossover, but it's Finnish crossover. So imagine like Ratus or a band like that that's like super falling apart, like crazy Turvit Cadet, those bands, kind of crazy, shrieky, D-beat, like kind of stuff, falling apart at the seams, frenetic kind of hardcore stuff, but with like a heavy dose of like thrash metal thrown in the picking and stuff. It's great. Unhinged vocalist, awesome. Then we've got Necrot, The Labyrinth. So I can't really get into the full lengths by these guys. They're decent, great live band. Whew, fucking kill it every time I see them live. But I always heard good stuff about the demo. And then I picked up, or rather was sent, a dub of their first demo from my friend Mario in Costa Rica. What's up, Mario? And I was like, wow, this is really, really good. Just primal death metal that's like one step away from like dirty, like crust punk, like kind of stuff. It's got a very like Oakland kind of vibe to it, So I was like, oh, I'll get this demos collection, and it's exactly that. It's all of those things that I just mentioned. It's awesome. Fucking basic, nasty, gnarly death metal. Another contender for one of my favorite albums of the year, and another melodic, but not Gothenburg melodic, death metal band release, Eye of Purgatory, The Lighthouse. This is really cool. I wasn't sure, like this much packaging with like the almost holographic kind of stuff always makes me a little wary. I hate when I hit the mic, man. Sorry. There's a map there. It's like, okay, what's going? Are you compensating for something? They're not. It's awesome. Again, really early Edge of Sanity is probably the best comparison I can give you. There's sparse keyboards on it that are kind of like synthy in the background, kind of haunting. Lots of great trem picking with a lot of like pretty catchy, crucial melodies. Great commanding, bellowing, growl vocals. It's the whole package. It's awesome. Then this is a cool reissue of two, I think Niagara Falls, not even Buffalo, but Niagara Falls, New York area death metal bands from the early 90s, Eternal Torment and Obscurity. This is the New York split of Death. This was put out on CDN Records and the Growl Records. That's Cam, who's doing that documentary. You've probably seen him around on different streams and stuff. He's been on a couple podcasts and all that. He helped put this out. I was just really chuffed to get the Eternal Torment stuff. I have both of the singles, both the 7 inches, and then they have a demo, which is impossible to find, so I really wanted those tracks. Real raw, heavy, early 90s proto-brutal death metal stuff. They played with Baphomet and Cannibal early on. You can definitely hear that kind of going on with it. It's that kind of stuff, chunky, grisly death metal shit. Obscurity is more of the same. The Obscurity stuff on here is really, really rough recordings. I like it. I like stuff that's real noisy, but it's definitely like 4-track Tascam or maybe 8 at best kind of shit. So that's a be forewarned kind of thing if you're a Fidelity guy with your death metal. And then the Brutality demos. Complete demo recordings 87 to 91. I think there were a couple of different versions of this before this. This is another Vic reissue. I think the band themselves had released something that was all their demos. I'm not sure. It's great to hear the origins of this. I love Brutality. When the Sky Turns Black. Great, extremely brutal, technical Florida DM, early 90s stuff. This is all their roots. It's going back to as early as 87. So a lot of the stuff is like very heavy thrash. This like 87 stuff is just thrash. And they haven't quite gotten there yet as far as like the super brutal stuff. Screams of Anguish and all that. But this is very competent, really, really fun listen if you like demo death metal stuff. It's the Florida stuff. You can kind of hear the influences congealing. That's why demo collections are fun. Then you got Ceremony. Not the hardcore band that is now a synth band, but a Dutch death metal band. Mid-90s, I think this was 94 or 95. Tyranny from Above. These guys are basically Sinister Jr. Not a bad thing at all. Kind of like a mix of the first two Sinisters, kind of sounds like to me. There's something with the bass levels on this that makes it sound a little blown out, which people might kind of take issue with, but I think it's charming. But yeah, it's got that combination of like technicality and a little bit of gloom and kind of misery as far as like the vibe goes. That's like uniquely sort of Dutch, I feel. Especially when you're talking about Sinister and early Pestilence and shit like that. But yeah, solid Dutch death metal. Sytematic Death, like more or less the discography for the punks and the thrashers. For the punks and the thrashers. That's both of them are me. Yeah, this is just classic Japanese hardcore, thrashy hardcore. I mean thrash in the early 80s MRR review sense, not like thrash metal. DRI before they crossed over kind of thrash, if that isn't confusing. Capitalist Casualties. Just hyper fast punk. Real angry, screaming your head off. Very Japanese. Almost sounds like the Bastard Children of Gauze or something like that. Just real nuts. Up-tempo, fun stuff. The third Unholy record, Unholy, from Europe. Grace Fallen. Finland. Those weird Peaceville CD cases that are like real awesome until they crack and then you can't replace them. Getting a little bit more streamlined from their earlier stuff on this. It feels like half and half, like their regular vocalist and like female vocals on it. It's good. It's very gothic. Less like really weird occult kind of death doom stuff. It's a little bit more streamlined. Good though. Fall of the Leaf. Recommended to me by Justin, Vestibon's Blood Box. I loved this. He just hit me up on Messenger a while ago, a month and a half ago, something like that. I was like, hey, check out this Fall of the Leaf band. If you like Paradise Lost, like Draconian Times and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, I'm a latecomer to Draconian Times, by the way. I remember buying it when it came out and being like, fuck this. I really like it now, because it's like Hetfield doing like a Sisters of Mercy kind of thing. But anyway, this is kind of along those lines. It's got a strong like goth rock kind of vibe, more so I'd say like stuff like The Mission and like I don't know, like later Sisters of Mercy, that kind of stuff, rather than something really weird like Bauhaus or anything like that. So it's, or like even Cleopatra Records kind of shit, Nosferatu or Rosetta Stone, one of those kind of bands, but mixed with like a lot of heavier kind of metallic elements. Super upbeat, super catchy, very, very melancholic, kind of take it with a grain of salt. It's really hyperbolically melancholic, but it's rad though. And I'm trying to remember where they're from. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember when this came out. I don't know that either. I will put a caption. I think sometime in the 2000s. Looks like they have Scandinavian names. We'll go with Scandinavia and sometime in the 2000s. Then we got one from the old hometown there. Soulstice. Raise the Earth. This came out on Varied Distribution, which was a label early on, pushing the whole metalcore thing before it changed. Putting out bands like Acme and stuff like that, who were great. This is a Syracuse band with a sound that was very typical to Syracuse at the time. Although I will say that scene that I grew up in was actually very small in terms of local bands. There were only like 5 or 6 that played out regularly. There was Earth Crisis, Bonejack, Infusion, who later turned into Blood Runs Black. Bonejack became Cross Section. These guys in Green Rage, Flak Jacket. There were only a handful from the Syracuse hardcore scene. It was pretty small. It's just tons of people came to go to really big shows there. These guys put out a 7-inch, I think called Dark Hour, a few years before this. That was pretty like typical of the time. A lot of like chugga chugga sort of riffs, basic openy, some dive bombs here and there. This kind of takes that and takes it a step further. You can tell they've been doing their homework, listening to Life, Love, Regret by Unbroken probably, working in a lot of like almost kind of like Heartwork-esque kind of Carcass parts. A lot more like melodic, like thrash and death metal, little touches. I mean, it's still very like mid-pace, stompy, kind of staccato, kind of metallic hardcore stuff, but there's the occasional fast part, and there's more like real, like memorable, formed riffs kind of forming here. I would have loved to have seen another record come out by these folks, but they split up. Unfortunately, their singer's no longer with us. R.I.P. Dave. And I met the guitarist later on. He was living in Boston and doing like a synth pop band or something like that. So obviously went into other pastures there, but yeah, Soulstice, Raise the Earth. It's a good one. Nobody really talks about Soulstice. People talk about Green Rage all the time, and of course Earth Crisis, but. And then just a CD reissue of the Destruction demo, Bestial Invasion of Hell, and it's got the hits. Mad Butcher, Front Beast, Tormentor, Antichrist. Very early example of just like unbridled, proto-black, ugly, stripped down, virtually perfect Teutonic metal. You know it. It's Destruction. Well, CD's over. I was going to talk about one more, but I feel like I've worn out my welcome here. It's, Jesus, almost at 40 minutes before the editing process. We'll whittle that down. Yeah, thanks for hanging out with me. More updates to come. Just updates and updates and updates, yo. Bye.